Hi, all. Okay, so chapter 6, which was the reading for week 5, really focused on introducing and focusing the study. Okay, so in chapter 6, Creswell and Poth examined 3 topics related to introducing and focusing a qualitative study, which were the problem statement, okay, the purpose statement, and the research questions. And so, in all of the research courses that you have taken with me, these are things that you have that you've had to write about, or that you've had to include in your final papers, that you've read about as well. But what I love about this text is that it is specific to qualitative. Okay, and so they offer some really so Crystal and Paul offer some really helpful information on all 3 aspects, and even with regards to the research questions, they kind of expand what you all have normally learned, or what you've normally done in terms of research questions. And I have a little bit to add to that once I get to the end, kind of my thoughts about the research question aspect of the chapter. Okay, so in terms of the first piece here, which was looking at in terms of looking at the study problem, purpose, and questions within the research, what's important is methodological congruence, okay? And that begins with identifying the research problem, the primary purpose of the study, and the questions guiding the study design. All three of these aspects of the study is what really helps to provide methodological congruence. I've seen it time and time again where where a researcher, and not students necessarily, it could be a researcher where I am reviewing a journal article, and I will see a difference or a lack of consistency in terms of the in terms of identifying the research problem, and that's different than the primary purpose of the study. And the research questions may not have anything to do with either one of the first two. And so you have to make sure that there's some parallelism, okay? There's some consistency across the three, and that the three are aligned. I am working with a team, and we are writing a research methods book on the use of focus group research in mixed methods, for mixed method studies. And so that's one thing that we're pointing out is the importance of methodological congruence, and that it begins in these areas as well. And you also have to consider your data analysis techniques as well, in terms of making sure that that's also congruent to the other aspects of the study. Okay, so these decisions provide a foundation for subsequent decisions. Okay, about the research methods, and for example, that would be data collection and data analysis. Okay, so really important. There has to be consistency or congruence throughout the entirety of the study. You're always looking back. So once you have your research problem and your research purpose, then you go back. You go back from the point of the purpose, and you look at the problem and say, okay, is my problem congruent with my purpose? It is. Okay, then I'm going to go forward with my questions. Okay, now are my questions congruent with my purpose and my problem? Okay, it is. And then you can move forward, and then with each step you take a look back to see if this new piece that you've added is congruent with what you've already stated. If it isn't, you need to make sure you have to make sure that it is congruent. Okay. And so it is a narrowing process from a clear research problem statement to the research purpose statement to the central and sub research questions. Okay. So the research problem statement. So with this, the book does a really good job of kind of like of it in the opening paragraph describing the need for study, and creates a rationale for the need of a study. And so a good introduction has 5 components. Okay, the first advances the topic and creates reader interest. Okay, so a narrative hook. The second discusses the research problem or need for study arising from real life issues or literature gaps. Okay, and I've talked about that a little bit in with regards to the chapter 5 reading. Okay. And then the third component summarizes the scholarly literature that has addressed this research problem, either directly or for a closely related topic. Okay. Component 5 points to deficiencies in evidence, including gaps that exist as related to the particular approach. And component 5 argues the importance of the study for audiences or stakeholders that will profit from your study. Okay, so this is what's involved in making sure that you write a very clear research problem statement for qualitative research, and making sure that you write a research problem statement that's very inclusive of all of these elements will ensure that you have a very strong research problem statement. So in terms of your purpose statement, the purpose statement really provides the major objective or intent or roadmap for your study. Okay. So the purpose statement is something that as you are writing your paper or as you're writing your dissertation, it should be it should be stated the exact same throughout, because again, it's providing the objective. And so whenever you modify that, then you're basically modifying the objective of your study. And so it's important because again, it serves as a roadmap for your study. And so it is the most important statement in the entire qualitative study and needs to be clear and concise. Okay, and so I believe in chapter 6 that there's a bit of a script that's provided, and so you all should definitely read through that and make sure that you're very familiar with that information. And when you do your first draft of your purpose statement, that you use this script to develop it, especially specifically for those who are doing a qualitative research study. And then you can always go back and modify it, and especially when you meet with your committee, at least we would know that you would have, gone through this step to kind of get some really good ideas down for your purpose statement. Okay. And so the components of the script include identifying the specific qualitative approach, and that's important whether you're doing qualitative or quantitative, making sure you identify the type of approach that you are utilizing for your study. Make that clear. Specificity is really important, and oftentimes when I provide you all feedback on papers, I'm always hounding specificity. Okay, it's really important because it also goes to the replicability of your study, and that is ensuring that you're providing enough information so that if anyone were to come behind you and want to conduct your study, that they could follow the steps that you conducted and recreate your study. Okay. The second component of the script includes encoding the passage with words to indicate the action of the researcher and the approach. Okay. The third component identifies the central phenomenon, which is the one central concept being examined. Okay, so you want to be very clear and explicit on what you're examining. And what's important about that is that when you are very clear about what you're examining, I've seen this happen sometimes in dissertation defenses where you may have people in the audience, and not just defenses. I've seen this before at national conferences or at national and regional conferences, where you may present a paper and you mention the purpose statement, and when it comes time for Q&A, someone may ask you a question about your study that's not related to your purpose statement. Okay, so they may ask you a question, kind of questioning your approach or questioning your findings about something that may be related to, but that doesn't fall within your purpose statement or the purpose of your study. Okay, and so I've had that happen before, and I've had to say, well, I see your point, but that wasn't the purpose of this study. Okay, and so you have to kind of it allows you to help to focus people and rein them in terms of what in terms of the parameters of your actual study. So it's really important. If you're not clear on that, then you open yourself up for not only criticism but for questions about how reliable and valid your study actually is. Okay, and that's qualitative or quantitative. Okay, and then the fourth aspect or component of the script is the foreshadowing of the participants and site for the study. Okay, so that's important because when you're conducting a study, you want to make sure that you're very clear about who you worked with, or rather who your participants were. And that's important because as others are reading as others are learning about your study, or if they're reading an article that derived from this research, it's important for them to be able to know who were you working with. If I am a teacher who's working with ELL students and I am seeking research to help me improve my pedagogical approach in the classroom, what's helpful is to know, as I'm reading through articles, who did these researchers work with? Is this research specific to my student population? And so, and even for you all, as you pull articles, as you are pulling resources for your literature reviews, it's very important that you look for research related to your topic that looks at the specific population that you are looking to examine. Okay. And so it's great to have that information, so that way it helps you kind of really gain knowledge about your topic and have a really great foundation. And so it's good when you can find that information. Okay. But if you can't find that information, it's not a bad thing. What it goes to show you is that there's a gap in the literature. And so your purpose is to then fill that gap. Okay. Okay, so it is also helpful to include a general definition of the central phenomenon. Okay, so really it's important to provide a definition and a description, okay, of the central phenomenon that's being studied. And then also, the chapter does a really great job in examples 6.1 through 6.5 from each of the 5 approaches that have encoded words that reflect the approach. So they show you the words that actually reflect the approach in chapter 6. So definitely make sure that you review that information. With regards to research questions, so I think that Creswell and Poth did a great job of breaking this down. But I will tell you, I'll have some opinions about it. I will discuss it at the end. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the central question, okay. So Creswell and Poth talk about the central question, and they talk about that the central question is a qualitative research question that they're typically open-ended. They're ever evolving, and they're also non-directional. This is very different from quantitative research, which are typically not open-ended. Okay, they're closed-ended. They're typically not evolving. Okay, and they're typically directional. So you typically have variables. Okay, so you have an independent and a dependent variable. So typically they are directional. Whereas with qualitative research, they are non-directional. Okay. Also, in terms of the central research question, it restates the purpose in more specific terms. Okay, and typically starts with a what or a how. Okay, so it's never written, or it's never proposed in a way that you could answer with a yes or no, but it's typically a what or a how. Okay, and then also Creswell and Poth would recommend like one single overarching central question. Okay, that's somewhat broad. Okay, and then they recommend that you have several sub questions. Okay. And so in the chapter, they also provide examples of research questions for each of the 5 approaches, okay, which is great. And then they also talk about sub-questions, and Creswell and Poth mentioned about offering a number of small sub-questions that kind of further refine the central question. And so they offer that you should have between 5 to 7 sub-questions, and that the sub-question's purpose is to provide kind of a way to subdivide the central question. And so also these questions should also begin with the how or a what, okay, or what or how. And then they also provide examples of sub-questions in the chapter as well for each of the 5 approaches. So this is helpful information. I will tell you that if you're conducting a larger study, if you have the time to do it, then a central question and sub questions are appropriate. But our goal is to get you all out and done, okay? And so, so we're going to focus more on the central questions. I do think the sub questions will be helpful in terms of helping you to further refine and think through your central question to make sure that's truly appropriate. I know that typically our goal is to have you have anywhere between 1 and 3 research questions, preferably not more than 2 research questions, which is what I have asked you all to do for your group papers as well. Okay, and that is because as folks who are kind of new to this research process, we want you to really kind of get a thorough understanding of what it means to develop research questions, and not just develop them, but develop sound research questions. And so that begins with developing a very sound central question. And then if you want to do sub questions, we can talk about that. Okay, we can talk about that. But I do know that that your chairs more than likely will want you to limit it down to a couple of research questions. Okay, so that was kind of my commentary about the central and the sub questions, and that is that it's great. It helps you really kind of think through what you want to do in terms of your research, but it may not be something that may be feasible in terms of the time that you have to conduct your studies, because this is an expedited doctorate program, and so it's something we have to be mindful of. Okay. All right. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, make sure you let me know. And I will do everything I can to help you. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to mention. Okay, so for the chapter 5 reading, where Creswell and Poth went over the 5 different aspects of the qualitative research and provided examples. Okay, for phenomenology, I believe it was for phenomenology. There was a mentioning of etic and emic. Okay, perspectives, and so in terms of, now I think about it, was it phenomenology or was it ethnography? I believe it was ethnography. Okay, because ethnography deals with culture. So so there was a mention of etic and emic perspectives. And so when you're looking at etic perspectives refers to kind of objective outsider accounts. Okay, so objective kind of outsider knowledge or accounts, observations. Okay, and then emic refers to more insider accounts, and it's labeled as being subjective, but it refers to subjective insider accounts. So I want to make sure I clarify that because I forgot to do it in the last video. But again, it's etic and emic, which are typically used with ethnography dealing with culture. Okay. All right. Hope this was helpful.